Hi, I'm Josh, and welcome to Tech Tested. Valve's Steam controller released this week, and after playing with it for a few days, I'm sure you'll want to know, is this attempt at revolutionizing the game controller worth your money? First, let's talk about build quality. This thing's a lot lighter than I was expecting it to be, and it's also made of plastic, which I'm not super happy about. And it's also got these glossy surfaces that fingerprints just love to stick to. But with that being said, once I spent some time with it and felt the inputs and spent some time with the buttons and the triggers, I'm actually happy enough with the build quality. It's not bad, it's not fantastic, but I think for a company like Valve producing hardware for the first time, I think it's above acceptable. It doesn't feel cheap, although with the lightness, the first thing that I thought of when I picked it up was it feels kind of cheap, but I'm happy enough with it. Interestingly enough, the batteries actually go in both of the handles of the controller. You pop the back off like this, and the batteries actually slide into both sides with a little mechanism that you pull up to let them pop out. Next, let's talk about design. This controller has 7 face buttons. You've got your standard A, B, Y, X, as well as typically your back or your select, and then your start, and then of course your Steam home key. In addition to that, you've got 2 trackpads. Next, you've got an analog stick, which feels pretty good. It's rubber and feels of sufficient quality to me. I haven't had any problems with it. And you've got 2 triggers, 2 of which are dual function, as in you pull them down part of the way and it's like a throttle, and then the final click, it can actually be configured as a separate key. And then you've got these 2 paddles on the back, which I've actually found to be incredibly useful. The trackpads feel really great. I mean, you move your fingers across them and the texture doesn't annoy me. That's usually my biggest complaint with trackpads. And the haptic feedback, these little motors that buzz inside of them, really give you a sense of texture and space. They're really helpful. Probably my favorite thing about this controller is the paddles and the triggers. You've got these paddles on the back that work really, really well. I'm hardly using the face buttons because I've configured things like jump and reload, depending on the game, to these paddles on the back, and it feels a lot more natural to keep your hands on the trackpads and to use the triggers and these little paddles exclusively. The way the controller is ergonomically shaped feels very strange at first. It's tilting away from you, but here's the kicker. Once you spend some time with it, it feels fantastic. They really played to the strengths of their controller, and you can tell that they put it through many, many iterations, because once you spend some time with it, which you're gonna hear me say a lot, once you spend some time with it, it starts to feel great. The Steam controller tries to bridge a gap between games that work best with a controller and games that you can only play with a mouse and keyboard. There are lots of games that I've played before that I thought, this would be nice if I could play it on a couch. As much as I love playing with my mouse and keyboard, it would be really nice if you could sit back and do it on the couch. Well, the Steam controller does a great job of integrating with the Steam ecosystem. Big picture mode is fantastic, and it really lets you play just about anything that you want on the couch. But how does it actually compare with a controller versus a mouse and keyboard? Well, of course, this is just my personal opinion, and I've only gotten to spend a couple days with it, but I think it is a very suitable replacement for a controller. And while I don't think it's gonna be better than a mouse and keyboard in a lot of games, especially first-person shooters, I think it's very comparable. I found that using the joypad mode, where the trackpad essentially tries to recreate a joystick. You have a center where if you're pressing, nothing happens, and if you go further away from the center, you start to move like a joystick. I've not found this to work great, which some might find disappointing, but here's the great thing about this controller. There are almost an unlimited amount of customization options that you can do with it. I found that if you set the trackpad to trackball mode, it works fantastically. You may have seen these mice before, owned one yourself, or known someone who did. I was never a fan of them, but I know a lot of people were. You don't see them around that much anymore. But the trackballs, how they would work is if you flick it, your mouse would continue to move across the screen and deaccelerate until it stops. Well, that's basically what you set the input to do. And it sounds really strange whenever you're trying to explain it to people, but it's way better than the joystick mode. And how it works is it doesn't feel unresponsive. In fact, it feels incredibly responsive. And I'm amazed at how fast I can flick back and forth to turn all the way around, or look up or down, or look to a specific point really fast. And interestingly enough, if you flick and just let go of the pad, you'll spin around and deaccelerate over time, just like a trackball. But if you flick and then keep your finger on the pad, you come to a precision stop, and that is what makes it so amazing. It lets you control it almost as accurately as a mouse, I dare say. I mean, it's not quite there, but it's really surprising how well it works. But here's where the killer feature comes in: Gyroscope. What I do is I set my right pad to my trackball mode, but I have it so that whenever you're engaging with it, whenever you're touching it, you can actually move your controller and you'll get minute movements out of it. Basically works like this. You can flick and move around very quickly to point at a target, but then you just hold and you use the gyroscope's fine movements to track your target. It works incredibly. Like, I'm amazed at how well it works. And to be honest, I destroyed my kill-death ratio in Call of Duty trying to get used to it, but I can completely see how this is a very viable method of controlling the games. Now, while I consider the gyroscope the first killer feature, because it's a game changer, it sounds gimmicky, I know, but once you use it, you'll understand.
Clean kill. Overwatch kill.
And you do have to invest some time in it, trust me. It doesn't just come right away, and I'm still not totally used to it, but I'm positive as I spend more time with it, it's gonna become a lot more natural. But the second killer feature is the customizability. You can change every little minute detail on this controller. From the sensitivity to what kind of input it is to what is mapped where. There is no game that you couldn't theoretically configure to work with this controller. Now, I'm never gonna try to play Dota 2 with this game. There are a few select first-person shooters that I'm never going to try to control with a controller, no matter how good the controller is. For example, Counter-Strike. But that being said, the days are over of not being able to play a majority of PC games on your TV, sitting on your couch if you want to, because there is an unlimited amount of things that you can do with it and configurations you can set up. One of my favorite things about it is that a developer can create profiles for you to use, but Valve is really relying on the community for this. And I think it's been a smart move, because if you go into many different games and look at the community configurations, you can pick some really, really smart and intuitive control setups that the community has picked. You can see how many people are using it. It's just been a great way to discover how other people use the controller. And I've used lots of controller setups that I never would have used myself or would have written off before I would have even tried to configure it myself. But once I use it and see how other people use it and see how they explained how you use it, it's great. One thing I really like is the dual state trigger. So you pull it down, you get like a throttle, but then if you pull it all the way down, you get a click. I'm trying to get it on my mic. You get that click, and you can even configure two different states. So for example, in a first-person shooter, you would pull the trigger down to aim down your sights, right? But then once you complete that movement and click the controller, then you start firing. That's not my favorite use for it, but I know some people like it, and it feels intuitive. Other examples are, for example, in Rocket League, you can press the trigger down just for throttle to control how fast you want to go, but then if you finish it, you get the boost. It's a really cool way to play games, and I would have never thought to attach two different states to one trigger, but now you have the option to do that with any game. There are things you can do with it that make sense, and there's things that you can do with it that don't make sense, but I think people are going to find some really interesting uses for that. Now, I don't believe in rating things on a scale of 1 to 10. I just think it's worth buying or it's not, and I don't know how to arbitrarily assign a review score to this thing. So I'm just gonna say whether you should buy it or not. And according to me, you should. I think it's a fantastic controller, and I'm incredibly excited that Valve has led the way in doing something innovative with controllers. Between the touchpads, which you can do any number of things with, the gyroscope controls, the triggers, the paddles on the back, the overall just feel of the control, I think it's worth your money. And as long as you understand that it's very personal, you're not just gonna be able to hand it to someone and they're gonna be able to pick up and play however you've configured it to play, I think it's a great thing to have around. I'm really excited to get to know it better because this is a completely new way to control games. And in some ways, some games are gonna be pretty much the same way you've always played with a controller. But it opens up the opportunity for some fantastic new ways to do things. And this is just the first iteration of this controller. It's the first generation. This is the first time Valve has created hardware. I'm excited to see what they do with the second or third generation. I'd like to see the build quality and the materials upped a bit, but for now, I'm happy with this, and I think you should buy one today. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and leave a comment below if you'd like to see us do something else or review another piece of hardware in the future.